Another year has come to an end. This January will be the 8th anniversary of Pantheon Rise of the Fallen's Kickstarter announcement. But is it any closer to release than it was a year ago? The developers have actually been pretty transparent about their process, so let's find out. For many people, it's been a chaotic year, both in and outside of the gaming world, so I really can't blame you if you missed some things that happened in Pantheon's development. Even if you have been following it closely, it can be really easy to lose sight of the big picture by getting too caught up in the details. Maybe you simply forgot some things that happened earlier in the year. So that's why in this video, we're going to recalibrate our perspective by taking a look at the major events of Pantheon's development throughout the year in order. Obviously, it would take too long to talk about everything that happened, but we can at least highlight the important things, particularly about the game itself. There were a lot of community events and developer discussions that were interesting, but for this video, I'm going to focus on the things that actually affected how much longer it will be until the game is in your hands, if it's not already. So just because I don't mention something in a particular month doesn't mean that nothing happened that month. It just means that there weren't any significant announcements, since sometimes the developers have to go heads down for a bit to prepare for the next big objective. If you haven't really been following Pantheon much for more than the past year, please pause this video now and go watch my Saga of Pantheon's development video, which I'll link to in the upper right, to quickly get up to speed on the important backstory of how Pantheon got to where it is this year, because without that, some of this might not make any sense. If you want an even more comprehensive breakdown, visit www.libraryofpantheon.com, which is a website I helped build where you can easily find direct links to everything Visionary Realms has said about Pantheon since it was first announced. It's not affiliated with Visionary Realms, we're just a group of people who have been following the project for a long time and want to make it easier for other people to learn about it too. There's a ton of information at your disposal there, so just to name a few, you can get a general overview of the game, search for dev quotes about specific keywords, read the patch notes log, or view everything they've released in chronological order, which is what I did to put together this video for the year in review of 2021. So, as you might have been able to predict, let's start with January. Pantheon kicked off the year with a big reveal on Twitch alongside their friend Co-Carnage. This one took place in Fortress de Vair, which is a zone in Terminus that had never been seen before and has been modified for what is known as the Evaluation build. Now, the Evaluation build is something Visionary Realms worked on in the latter part of 2020 with the purpose of implementing all of Pantheon's core systems in one place to make it easier for potential investors and publishers to get a better idea of what Pantheon has to offer. This includes perception, ability mastery, stealth, climbing, climates, crafting and harvesting, dispositions, atmospheres, which are now known as fractures, and much more. For the Evaluation build, tweaks were made to Fortress de Vair to accommodate short demo sessions with prospective partners who don't have the time to play the hours and hours that it takes to get the most out of an MMO. So it'll be slightly different when you get there. But speaking of investors, the Evaluation build must have been doing its job because 8 days later, Visionary Realms announced that they had received a 7-figure private investment, as well as a new board member, Chris Cronenthal, an individual who, according to the Cornell University website, provides consulting to various Fortune 500 companies in regards to global commerce, security, and software development. While Visionary Realms clarified that the investment wasn't the full funding that they'll need, it did set the stage for a productive year as they set their sights on, quote, preparations to support over 8,000 players already signed up for an alpha release of the game, end quote. In that month's developer roundtable, when CEO Chris Rohn was asked if that meant alpha was going to happen in 2021, he said that as a small crowdfunded company, it was possible only with the quote-unquote right resources. Nevertheless, they quickly started putting that new money to work by hiring QA tester Mark Maraglino and HR manager Gina Rochelle. In March, myself and a handful of other community members had the opportunity to record our time playing in the Evaluation build. We found that the area of the world that the prospective investors have access to is much, much bigger than what was shown in CoCarnage's stream in January. We actually began our time in the zone of Fairthale, which was massive and gorgeous, much of which had never been shown to the public, and still hasn't because we were only allowed to release the 3+ hours of footage from our time in Fortress de Vair. But even there, we still didn't explore the zone completely. However, we did get to experience firsthand how difficult it is to navigate safely. Later that month, Vision Realms announced that Adam Mostel had joined the team as an associate game designer, who also brings his year of experience in operations at Fortune 500 companies to fill the much-needed role of production assistant at Visionary Realms. Along with this, the team released a to-do list of everything they'd need to accomplish from that point on in order for Pantheon to be considered ready for the new degree of exposure that would come with the start of Alpha. This is something that had been highly requested by the community, including myself, for a long time, as it provides more clarity as to where the finish line is for pre-alpha. Last but not least, that month's producer's letter announced the dates for the next pre-alpha test session, which took place in April. In May, Vision Realms held their longest consecutive pre-alpha testing session to date, with 30 hours of non-stop testing. And in that month's developer livestream, a scale map of the continent of Kingsreach was unveiled. This is literally a top-down view of the continent's terrain as it exists in-game as of May 2021. This is the area of the world that is slated to be available by the end of Alpha. Only a portion of it will be available at the beginning. And if you zoom in on the image, you can see how the terrain in some zones is more detailed than in others, but the broad strokes for all of them are already in place. June introduced NPC combat awareness. Just as a couple example of what NPC combat awareness means, in-game footage showed NPCs working together in combat, such as recognizing that one of their allies was crowd-controlled and casting a dispel to remove it, or having one NPC use an ability to temporarily put a player in an off-balance state, and then another NPC noticing that and taking advantage of it by using a different ability to knock the player down. Completing this system was a big step toward Pantheon's goal of having intensely strategic combat, and it also checked off the first and one of the most important items on their alpha to-do list. In July, the big strides were in another high priority item, class implementation, particularly with the new monk class ready to be showcased. Adding the monk class brought noticeable improvements to the animation controller for all classes, as well as new types of abilities that can be incorporated with other classes, such as abilities that give you the option to charge them up for greater effect, and dual-sided abilities that alternate between two versions each time they're used. July was also when environment artist Tim Schuler was hired. Tim replaced environment artist Jimmy Lane, who left the company that same month. From the last day of July to the first day of August, there was another even longer pre-alpha testing session, this one with 33 straight hours of server uptime. This provided feedback for the monk class, the new trait system, over 100 new abilities and statuses, and more. By the way, the trait system adds more variability to encounters, kind of like the disposition system, except instead of dispositions changing the way NPCs behave, traits are passive characteristics that NPCs sometimes spawn with that can change the way you fight them, like the superheated trait, which causes an NPC to get more powerful every time it takes fire damage. But some traits might actually help you, like making the NPC drop more loot than normal. It's another system in Pantheon that encourages you to pay attention to the world around you and expect the unexpected. With those refinements in place, the devs were ready to meet up with CoCarnage once again a couple of weeks later to show how all the recent combat improvements worked in a real group setting. This was also an opportunity to show off large portions of Halnir Cave that had never been seen before in any stream, including a multi-phase boss fight called the Thief of Eternity that showcased several new mechanics. Later that month, it was announced that Visionary Realms had hired Anthony Guidi, better known to the Pantheon community as Minus, since he had previously been the host of the Pantheon Plus YouTube channel. He joined Visionary Realms as an associate content creator and has since increased their communications with an expanded and more consistent newsletter, a new podcast, new monthly schedules, and more. In September, the time came to showcase progress made on the zone of Wild's End. Wild's End is the starting zone for the halfling race on the continent of Kingsreach, and was last seen in 2016 when it was made entirely from third-party Unity Store assets. As those who have been following Pantheon will know, in 2020, the developers had to start replacing most of those assets with proper custom assets to allow for better performance moving forward and to have more control over how the world is laid out. Wild's End is the work of environment artist Tim Schaller, who had just joined the team 2 months prior. By September, the entire zone had been sculpted in basic gray box form, and creation of the polished assets was underway. As the game world grew, it was also populated with gathering nodes to support the crafting and harvesting systems. In October, it became more obvious how the world had undergone significant changes as the developers finished implementing new terrain and asset streaming tech the month before. In short, this means the overworld of Pantheon is now completely seamless. The world loads around you automatically as you move, eliminating the need for loading screens. This allows for complete freedom in exploration. All of the mountains, rivers, oceans, etc. you saw in the Kingsreach terrain map are completely passable, provided you have the skill. In the past, Visionary Realms was using a program called Houdini to take that gray box terrain and turn it into procedurally polished terrain, meaning the program would intelligently decide where to place all the mundane but necessary assets like rocks, grass, dirt, trees, etc., saving the world builder a ton of time from having to hand place each of them individually. In that same October stream, it was announced that the developers were now using a different program called Gaia, which, according to them, does everything they needed to do with Houdini, but also does it faster and more efficiently. By the end of October, nearly all of the gray box terrain on the surface of Kingsreach had been converted to sculpted terrain. This doesn't include dungeons, which don't necessarily require the same treatment. In more technology news, Visionary Realms officially upgraded Pantheon's game engine from Unity 2019 to Unity 2021, and the game was converted to Unity's new high-definition render pipeline, or HDRP. A render pipeline is basically what takes the game code and turns it into what you see on your screen, and the HDRP is Unity's newest pipeline for high-fidelity graphics. Where this is most noticeable is the lighting. Pantheon had previously been using a lighting system comparable to what you'd find in most PlayStation 2 games, but the new HDRP allows for AAA quality lighting, so Visionary Realms began importing all of their assets into this new HDRP client to ensure that they played well with the new lighting. As a side note, you might have noticed that in the alpha to-do list from March, it mentioned converting the project to the URP, or Universal Render Pipeline. The URP is Unity's more basic renderer, which is in many ways easier to use from a developer standpoint, but can't reach the same degree of high-fidelity graphics as the HDRP. When asked why they later decided against the URP in favor of HDRP, senior programmer Robert Crane said, "When we started discussing the pros and cons for both, HDRP wasn't as mature as it is now, and we weren't sure the game would run smoothly in HDRP. But we knew that if we could get HDRP working, it would yield far greater visuals. Also, we had just made the decision to use Gaia for the procedural baking of our zones, and they were focusing on HDRP, which gave us the confidence to go with HDRP as well." End quote. By December, the majority of the art assets had been moved over, and in that month's developer livestream, some examples were shown of how dramatic the changes are when existing art assets are imported to the new HDRP. No changes were made to these character models. This is all just from the initial conversion to the new lighting system. Although, speaking of character models, that stream also announced that Philip Kedge had joined the team in the new position of character artist. That stream went on to show several examples of the new in-game weapon and shield models that Philip had already created. Rounding out this stream was a brand new zone called The Gate. The Gate is a high-level non-raid dungeon, which also happens to be a very vertical zone. With the implementation of the new terrain streaming tech a couple months ago, we learned that the game world now extends from 3,000 meters below sea level to 3,000 meters above sea level. And zones like the Gate take advantage of that, with the entrance located at the top of a mountain in Wild's End, and most of the progression in the zone being downward. Also, an end-of-year pre-alpha test took place in December, and then that month's producer's letter stated that the Paladin, Cleric, and Warrior classes have been added to the game. although footage of them in-game has yet to be released. And lastly, work on the all-important network overhaul has officially begun. If you don't already know, this is a proprietary network stack pioneered by lead programmer Kyle Olson. Unlike Unity's out-of-the-box network stack, Kyle's network stack is built with the grand scale of MMORPGs in mind. According to the devs, their initial demos suggest that once fully integrated, Pantheon will finally be able to support the activity of thousands of incoming alpha testers with ease. This work is estimated to take a few months, so it'll be definitely something to keep an eye on in the new year. But that brings us to today. I know that was a lot, so let's do a quick review by the numbers, starting with new hires. There were actually 7 new team members onboarded in 2021. I've only mentioned 6 so far, but there was also another one, Mo Ismailze. I apologize if I mispronounced that, but this new hire was actually never announced. Mo is listed on the team page as a Linux admin, which seems to be an answer to the job posting for that position that was announced in April. It was a bit of a stealth hire, so I can't determine exactly when he was hired, but it was added to their team page sometime between August and November. 4 new classes were added to the game this year: Monk, Paladin, Warrior, and Cleric, and there were 4 pre-alpha tests in April, May, July, and December. 2 brand new zones were shown in-game this year, Fortress Devair and The Gate. Make it 3 if you include the Wild's End revamp. But more importantly, the NPC combat awareness, terrain streaming, and HDRP project conversion are complete. These are massive tasks. Many of the other items on the alpha to-do list are dependent on these being done first, and are quite a bit smaller in comparison, so it's not unreasonable to expect the other items to be checked off the list faster than these. As we look forward to 2022, creative and programming producer Chris Java Perkins tells us what we can expect.
I mean, the banner I would put over 2021 absolutely is, weathering that storm of getting the project into this HDRP state and, getting everything ingested into that. What I'm excited about is 2022. And I mean, I am very excited about it. And the word that I would put on it, kind of the banner word I would put over 2022 as I thought about it, is imminence. We've been in development for a long time. So long, in fact, that the strides we're actually making right now are hard to really feel. It's hard to feel them, how significant they are, because we've been at this a long time. It is very clear if you're looking closely and you're looking deeply enough, it's clear to see, but I don't expect most people to do that. I mean, we all have lives that we're living. Life is hard, and we're not in this to like study the fine grain ins and outs of, the development cycle. We just want to know, like, is it happening? When's it happening? What's going on? So I get it. But the corners that we're about to turn, the jumps that we're about to make moving into 22, as we draw closer to alpha, as we burn through more and more of that checklist, and those things are demonstrable and able to be experienced by our testers, able to be showcased in our streams, I firmly believe that 2022 will be a year of Pantheon's ever-increasing eminence, that to solidify that this game's coming, and when it gets here, it's going to be an incredible experience. So that's what I'm anticipating. Obviously I have alpha in mind when I say that, because that's really the next milestone of all milestones. That's what we're all looking for and waiting for and hoping for. And this year has been about getting us, fully positioned and oriented to sprint towards that goal. And our hope is that everything we show will be further proof and building confidence that we are absolutely heading in that direction. And I think it's just going to reach a tipping point soon where it's so much more clear that that's happening than not.
If you don't want to be out of the loop about Pantheon's development going into the new year, hit the subscribe button now, because this channel is dedicated to following it closely. If you've been watching my videos for a while, you'll know that I never ask you to donate to Pantheon's crowdfunded development. I know everyone has different financial situations and levels of risk tolerance, so what you do with your money is completely up to you. However, if you do make that decision to pledge or upgrade your pledge, and my videos have in any way informed that decision, I'd appreciate it if you would list me as a referral when you get your post-pledge survey. My account is BAZGRIMTV@gmail.com, and that helps me to know that I'm covering the things that you want to know about. So, until the next video, have a very happy new year, stay curious, and adventure on.